Let's see if this works, yes. Wonderful. Okay, welcome. Prynhawn da, Katie dwi, dwi'n rhywraig cyfathrebu gyda'i desg greadigol yn Deyrnas Unedig. Dwi'n byw yn Llundain, ond dwi'n dod o Bro Morgan yn Reddiol. A dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg. So that was my Welsh language debut. I apologise now. And my Welsh-speaking goddaughter would be laughing out loud if she were here. But that was my attempt at some linguistic diversity. We've seen a lot of it over the past couple of days here in Aberystwyth. And it's also something which is a key part of Creative Europe, which is the programme that I helped to promote in the UK here. Today we have a wonderful lineup of all female speakers talking about different funding opportunities available in ways of helping organisations work internationally. So I'm delighted, first of all, that Ingveig has come over all the way from Brussels. She works for the European Commission there, looking after literature translation, the European Union Prize for Literature, refugee projects, and the list continues. We have two of my colleagues from the British Council in London, London actually, forgive me. Harriet Williams is based in London, looking after British Council and working in the literature team. And we have Rebecca Gould, who's based in Cardiff, looking after British Council Wales and the arts there. And finally, we have Becky from Wales Arts International, a development officer whose speciality is music, but for today, you're going to be focusing on literature and the wonderful things that we've seen over the past few days. So, at the moment, we've got instead of having a clicker, we have Ashley over here helping us, which is fantastic. So I might have to ask him to go on to the next slide. Yeah, and again. Great. So let me tell you a little bit about Creative Europe. So some of you may know, have heard of it already, but it's the European Union support programme for the audiovisual, cultural and creative sectors. And it works across, the EU member states and various other countries in the neighbourhood, and has a sector sort of wide budget of 1.46 billion for over a 7-year period from 2014 until 2020. And I work for Creative Europe Desk UK. We're a team of individuals based across the UK, and we work to promote Creative Europe programme to organisations here to encourage them to apply, to think about working internationally, to help them with their kind of first steps along the way. So we organise events across the UK, from workshops, kind of large industry and networking events. We have one-to-one sessions with organisations who are interested in applying, a whole range of and we've also got a really great new website as well, so please check that out. The URL will pop up at some point, no doubt. We also work very closely with the sectors in the UK to get feedback from you, which we can then pass on to our colleagues at the Commission and the Executive Agency in Brussels. So it's really essential that all the kind of feedback that you give about the programme and how Creative works in the UK, we can actually pass that on, and we can act as kind of essential middleman. Oh, we've got some new arrivals, great. And overall our aim is to obviously increase funding that comes to the UK from Creative Europe. And so how we're set up is slightly different. So Creative Europe Desk UK is set up as a kind of consortium-led partnership, and it's really wonderful how this has happened. And it started in 2014, and it's actually led by the British Council and BFI, so we have colleagues in all of the partner organisations. And here in Wales, we work very closely with the Welsh Government, and Creative Scotland, Arts Council Northern Ireland, Arts Council England as well, in order to make sure that we are kind of accessing wider networks, that we make the most of the contacts that everybody has in each nation of the UK, in order to kind of spread the good word about working internationally and about Creative Europe. And we're also kindly supported by DCMS and the European Commission too. And this is a lovely little map to show you where we're based across the UK. So hopefully there's an office sort of near you. If not, we're very high tech. We do love to Skype. We don't mind picking up the phone as well, so please do get in touch. Right. So Creative Europe and its aims. The programme is set up in order to help works travel, but also to help people travel. It's all about circulation, and hopefully via circulation for these works to reach new audiences. To take works from Wales, from beautiful places like this, to other parts of Europe and to kind of share cultural identity and also encourage linguistic diversity. It's also to encourage innovation. So that can be sort of artistic and creative innovation, new ideas. We've been discussing lots of things over the past couple of days about audience development techniques and innovative approaches to reaching out to new audiences, but also in terms of business models and financing. So again, this morning we are sharing our different ways of which we might work with private donors or corporate sponsors and national funders as well. So Creative Europe is really there to kind of, hopefully bring people together so they can share best practice, share their skills, but also encourage training and education. And all in all, then, the programme over the 7 years will hopefully strengthen policy so that these programmes can evolve and become better and more suitable and sort of serve the sector as much as possible. Thank you. So under the Culture Sub-Programme of Creative Europe, there are 4 funding opportunities. Ingveig will be talking about literary translation, and I will be covering cooperation projects, platforms and networks. These 3 funding opportunities are all about collaboration and working together. And we're very lucky today to be sort of witnessing a platform in action. That's Literary Europe Live, who is obviously sort of organising the project which has brought us all here today. But it's important to sort of mention that these collaborative projects are open to all art forms and also open to multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary activity. So we have, for example, dance organisations working with museums on audience development projects to work out whether there's crossover, whether there could be crossover, whether there shouldn't be crossover at all. So it's very wide and broad what you can do. So just to mention the countries that take part, obviously we have the 28 EU member states, and when you're applying for these 3 kind of collaborative funding opportunities, you really need to find partners that you want to work with for several years. That they have to be organisations, obviously. Unfortunately, the funding doesn't go directly to individuals, but obviously Creative Europe helps individuals through organisations in that way. So it helps the artists through organisations like Literature Across Frontiers. And collaborating with first of all, the EU member states, but also those neighbourhood countries. Are delighted, for example, that this year the Ukraine is the latest country to join Creative Europe as an eligible participating country there. And you can also collaborate further than Europe, so you can collaborate internationally. Obviously, this is can't spend more than 30% of the budget on those international partners, but it's really great that you can look further than Europe, and that's really important in terms of the international work you do. We don't want to place borders around Europe at all in that respect. Great, so cooperation projects is the largest funding opportunity within the Culture Sub-Programme of Creative Europe. I think around 70% of the budget goes to these cooperation projects. They vary greatly in scale and in size, and these are partnership projects where organisations would work together for around maybe 2 to 4 years, and they would share activities. They would kind of work together perhaps on things like events, programmes, festivals, conferences, online platforms, research. It's really very broad, and you can see it's a funded projects area on our website where you can see a whole breadth of activity going on. Yes, obviously these all kind of respond to Creative Europe's priorities as well. So the priorities I was mentioning earlier about transnational circulation, about audience development, all of these projects kind of respond to those aims. There are annual deadlines every year in early October, and you can submit applications for small or large cooperation projects. The smaller ones are involving 3 partners in 3 different countries, at least, and then you can apply for up to €200,000, and the larger ones are working with a minimum of 6 organisations in 6 different countries, and the grants available are up to €2 million, and match funding applies here, and it's sort of between 50 and 60% for the small and large cooperation projects. And here are just a few examples of ones which I picked out which had a literary or literature-related theme. So Free Word Centre just finished a project called Weather Stations. You can visit the website Global Weather Stations to have a look, and it's all about literary responses to climate change. Looking at this wider theme, working with their partners around Europe to kind of find, they had lots of different events, they had education projects connected with this, a wonderful online platform, lots of really interesting video content as well. And the European Literature Network, which there are some faces that I've spotted throughout the weekend of people who attend these meetings in London. It's part of ELIT, which is a sort of network for kind of discussion, for exchange of knowledge and research, it's the European Literature Networks in London, and a really great way, a kind of informal meeting for anyone involved in European literature, coming together every few months and sharing news, updates, various different things, and then also they organise events called Eurostars, in which they bring European Union Prize Literature with sort of winning authors and other European authors to London to talk about their work and to kind of give people insight into European literature and how that happens in other countries. Another one which is focusing on children's literature and about the internationalisation and digitalisation of children's literature is this one called Transbook. No Brow are a graphic novel and kind of, I think, sort of focused and comic book focused organisation based in East London, and they organise the East London Comic Book Festival, I think it's a comic art fair, they've done some it's a really beautiful website and a really interesting project about how you can kind of get children's literature online, and they saw that as a kind of gap in the market and something that hadn't been researched that widely. So there's that. Great, and so European platforms. It's a much smaller funding opportunity, and congratulations to Literature Across Frontiers, because it's very competitive to be successfully applied to this funding opportunity. It's new under Creative Europe, I believe. It was something which came with the new programme. And its opportunities, it's really all about emerging talent and also audiences. Getting that emerging talent, as you know, there were 10 emerging writers announced yesterday, as sort of and sharing their work with European audiences. So with these platforms, there's a lot of sort of working together in that way, but also giving visibility and mobility to this new talent. And what's great about it as well is it's multi-annual funding. So sort of for 2 or 3 years, you'll be able to, apply for these grants that come in every year, and up to €500,000, obviously, per year. And the match funding is kind of a lot sort of lower, which is great in terms of they give you at least 80%, and then you have to find the remaining 20%, which is wonderful support. Next one. European networks. I think at the moment there actually isn't a literature-focused European network supported by Creative Europe, so if anyone wants to start one and apply, then please do. But European networks are all about professional exchange. So there are quite a few, for example, there's Culture Action Europe, which is all about policy, and the members of those groups, or the members of Culture Action Europe of this network work together to kind of lobby in order to change cultural policy or adapt it, make it better. And then there's also IETM, for example, which is worth looking at. It's a really great contemporary performing arts network. They do really interesting research, which is relevant to all sectors. Research into other European funding beyond Creative Europe, research into audience development, and yes, these networks are really about sharing that expertise in the sector. A lot of what we're doing today is about that, and what we've done over the past couple of days. And of course, again, encouraging linguistic and cultural diversity, and a lot of research goes on that's related to these networks. So some good news, some lovely statistics to share with you. We've been pulling together results from the past 2 years, and the UK has done really, really well, and €40 million has come to UK organisations and films through Creative Europe. And that's 220 organisations supported in the UK. That's across the audiovisual and the cultural sector. And we're delighted that 53 UK cinemas, most of them independent ones, are supported to show European films specifically through the Europa Cinemas network, which is that advert that you often see come up at the beginning in the trailer section. And also, just to mention, before we pass over to Ingveig, within those funded organisations, we're really happy that there's some publishers across the UK that are funded for the literary translation strand. So we've got Micah here from Parini Press, who was talking about her very inspiring audience development techniques. Other publishers like Harvel Secker and Istros and Mackelhose were also supported. And fittingly, today, the book of the day on The Guardian is a Creative Europe supported novel. Hooray! Bosnian author, I think it's Farouk Sehik, I've probably pronounced that wrong, with a novel which has just been translated and published into English, and it is called Quiet Flows the Una. So I do recommend picking that up. That's published by Istros and funded by the programme. So on that note, I'll pass over to Ingveig.
Now you can hear me. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I go on to talk about literary translation, I wanted to say a few words about the European Union Prize for Literature. And as Katie said, this author, he was the winner, I think, in 2000 and, was it 12? 11 or 12.
Yeah.
We'll check that out. So if you the winners of the European Union Prize for Literature in 2016 were announced on the 8th of March by Commissioner Navracic in Brussels. 12 winners from as many countries. This year, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Cyprus, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Germany, Luxembourg, Romania, Slovenia, and Spain. You see their names there. I won't pronounce them for fear of pronouncing them wrongly. But those are this year's winners. Let's see. I wanted to say a little bit about what is this prize about. If you could take the next slide. This is a prize for literary talent. It recognizes the best emerging authors in Europe. It's a fairly new prize. It was launched only in 2009, so it's in its 8th edition now. It's awarded annually. It's open, this competition is open to all countries participating in Creative Europe, and as Katie said, by now it's 39 countries, and more are actually asking to join. The prize is organized with the professionals of the book sector, the European Federation of Publishers, European Federation of Booksellers, and the European Writers' Council. As every European project, this is also very complicated because it's not that easy. Just imagine, how can you choose the best book in Europe, or the best book by an emerging author in Europe? It's simply not possible in that sense. It would be very controversial in any case. So the prize is thought out in the sense that we want to give a prize to an author from all of these countries. But we cannot do that every year. 39 prize winners every year, it would be a bit too much. So we thought out a brilliant system. We give prizes to 12 or 13 authors every year. And over a 3-year period, that means that 36 to 39 countries are represented. If you show me the next slide, I put up the schedule there, because it's very thought out. Every year then you have a selection of small and big countries, north and south, east and west, language groups represented and so on. So we've grouped these countries into 3 groups, and as I said, Every country will then have a winner every third year. Very fair, very transparent, we think, and all languages, all countries are represented. The UK has so far had two winners, 2011. Adam Folds, you know him? He got the prize for the book called The Quickening Maze. And in 2014, Evie Wild, All the Birds Singing. I think she has had quite a bit of success. And I think both of them are, I'm not sure how many languages Evie Wild's book has been translated into, but it's quite a few. And the same with Adam Folds. Both through our program and by other means. Did I say everything now that I wanted to say? Could you give me the next slide? Yeah, the point of the prize is, of course, we want to showcase European contemporary fiction. We want to raise the profile of these authors outside their home country and encourage transnational circulation of literature. We also want to raise awareness in the book sector about the diversity of literature in Europe and promote throughout the whole book chain the translation, publishing, selling, and reading of books from other European countries. I think I didn't say how the books are selected. It's by national juries, actually, set up by these three organizations that I mentioned. So each country in the year where they're going to select a winner, they set up a jury, normally of 3 to 5 members, representing publishers, booksellers, authors, critics could be as well. And it's the national juries that select the winner from their country. And so it's not the European Commission or European Union in that sense. But we bring them together every year then, the winners, in an award ceremony in Brussels. This year it takes place on the 31st of May in the evening, and we celebrate these authors. And we try to, as well, promote these authors at book fairs. We usually have an event at the Frankfurt Book Fair, normally as well in London, Paris, and so on, and at Passaporta in Brussels. So we try as well to promote them to a wider audience. Okay, the European Union Prize for Literature as well, it shares some of the objectives of the literary translation scheme under Creative Europe. You will see that the literary translation action supports cultural and linguistic diversity. It wishes to promote the transnational circulation of high quality literature. It wants to improve access and reach new audiences. And one priority of the scheme is also to raise the profile of translators. So we demand from the project applicants that they describe the translator that they have chosen, give the CV, and also to recognize the translator on the published book. So to give credits for the translator. So another priority of the action is to encourage translation from smaller languages, or languages spoken by few, into English, German, French, and Spanish. And this is with the idea of circulation in mind, that we think that having books translated from the smaller language areas into the bigger language areas, you increase the circulation. Yes, and there is also a priority in the action to promote in particular, or to translate in particular, the European Union Prize for Literature winners. And we give applications for grants that include these books by these winners, extra points. I will give you a little bit of detail about that. I don't know if any of you are planning to apply. So I will go very quickly through these eligibility criteria. You can find full information on the webpage, but just to give you an idea of the main rules. Who can apply? It's active publishers. They need to at some point prove that they have the rights to translate the book for which they apply for translation grants. They can apply for a package of books, for 3 to 10 books in a package, minimum 3, maximum 10. They can get up to 100,000 euros in support. So in order to get that sum, you need to put up a budget of 200,000 euros, because the co-funding is 50%. You can apply to get funding for translation, of course, but also for publication, and not the least for promotion. And this is something new as well with Creative Europe. It didn't exist in the previous program. You can get money to promote the translated books. Next. You can have grants to translate books from and into the languages of the countries participating in Creative Europe. And this must be the officially recognized languages. There must be in the constitution or in the basic law of the country some reference to what are the official languages of the country. And I think the UK does not have such a reference. English is not an official language of the UK, I think. It's not referred to anywhere. But I think we can safely say that English is spoken in England or in the UK. That's one condition. In addition, the language must be either the source or the target language must be an officially recognized language in an EU or EEA country. So you cannot have a grant to translate from and into languages that are totally outside the EU EEA area. Latin and ancient Greek is an exception, or are exceptions. These are also possible source languages. The target language must be the translator's mother's tongue. There are exceptions to this rule if it's it can be if you explain. It's not always easy to say what is your mother's tongue. It has to be explained. But that's the main rule. Translations must have a cross-border element, so you cannot translate from and into two official languages in the same country. So not from Welsh into English.
The Welsh is eligible to translate into.
So,
yeah.
Next one, please. Paper or ebooks are both eligible, of course. It must be quality works of fiction. I won't go into that discussion. And authors must be national or residents of countries participating in the program. Next one, please. The project proposals are evaluated each by 2 European experts. You can get, for an application, up to 100 points. And there are 4 main award criteria. They are evaluated on relevance, relevance to the priorities and objectives of the program, the quality of content and the activities, promotion and communication activities, and as the fourth award criteria, you can get so-called automatic points. If your application contains books by books for which their author has won the European Union Prize for Literature, you can get up to 15 extra points for these. Next one, please. According to this schedule, so if you have one EUPL winning book, you get 3 points, and then up to 15 points you can maximum get for the maximum 5 books in a package. Next, please. There are annual calls. So far we've had 2 calls, 2014 and 15. In 2014 there were actually 2 calls. There was one call for so-called framework partnership agreements. So these were projects that would run over 3 years, and they get a sort of simplified application procedure annually. So these projects were 11 projects selected in 2014, and they are still running. So they get 10 books, they translate up to 10 books every year according to a 3-year plan. Wait. In 2014, you also had a normal, let's say normal call. 64 projects were selected. You see that the success rate is a bit higher here than in the cooperation project. 64 of 2,238, that would be about 30%? 25%? 45%? So it's quite good. The call in 2015 had 246 applications. That was without the framework partnership agreements, and 58 projects were selected. So it's and each of these calls through each of these projects, or these projects, contained about 500 translations from and into more or less between 30 and 35 source or target languages. Next one, please. So the last selection round then in 2015, 58 projects selected, as I said. These were by publishers in 15 countries. There were 399 different books, so titles, 346 novels, 512 translations. So you see that some books are translated into several languages. 33 languages represented, and 33 as source languages and 17 languages as target languages. And total budget 3.8 million euros. Thanks. I'm coming to the end. 2016 call was published in the beginning of March. Budget is more or less the same as previous years. The deadline is 27th of April at 12 noon, Brussels time. Selections are done throughout the summer then, and information to applicants go out in August, and project starts from September. Next, do I have one? No, that was it. Okay, thanks.
Can I just add that the deadline, absolutely important. When we submitted our first EU application a few years ago, we missed it by 2 minutes. And we begged and we sent emails, and because we spent weeks writing that application.
Put it in your diaries the day before.
Yeah, it's really important.
So it's 26th of April, not 27th. Great, thank you very much. And now we'll be especially in partnership with Girls International.
Okay. Hello, so I'm Harriet Williams and I'm the Programme Manager for EU Europe and also for London Book Fair, which, as probably most of you know, next year is going to be Poland, so fits within the EU. The next slide, please. We work with writers, publishers, producers, translators and other sector professionals across literature, publishing and education. We work with you to develop programmes and collaborations that provide opportunities for cultural exchange with the UK. This might be through festivals, book fairs, conferences or in the classroom, to name just a few. So I was going to say our programmes are strategic and responsive. So we have 7 overseas regions. Each region has its own literature person, so there are 8 of us in the team, in the UK who coordinates with British Council offices in the country. And budgets, importantly, sit with the country office. Programmes can come about through the needs of the country, so they'll write to us and ask us for a writer to go to a particular festival like Bocas in South America. And we'll supply a list of suggestions for the country team. They pick one, and then we would approach them, contract the writer, and handle the invoices whilst the payment comes from the country. Alternatively, our strategic programmes run slightly differently. For example, as part of Shakespeare 400, we have a global programme called Shakespeare Lives, and the literature team has 3 different programme offers for this, which we offered to the various different countries, and they picked the one that they felt would fit best with their programme generally and their budgets. So we're running translation workshops in Qatar with Kate Griffith and Patrick Spotswood of the Globe, and also in Germany and several other countries. We're doing sonnet exchanges in Sudan and a Walking Cities programme in EU Europe, which is a series of filmed exchanges between a British writer and a writer from the country. They walk through a city, they talk about the theme that has been chosen and loosely interpreted from Shakespeare. It's filmed, so then we have content that we can put on our website, and then it's bilateral as well, so they go to the country and then they come to the UK, and I think Rebecca is going to talk a bit more about that. And yet, just to reiterate, the literature team advise on UK writers, whilst the country team suggests writers from their country for that. And I'm going to take you through some case studies, because I think it's a bit more interesting. But then first, this slide has our major partnerships, and these are ongoing partners that we work with all the time on our strategic programmes. Okay, next slide. Okay. Slightly unfortunate tiny book cover, but never mind. So the first case study is Mexico 20, and this is part of our programme with the London Book Fair Market Focus. So I have to tell you a bit about that. So the Market Focus programme was first created in 2004, and London Book Fair used it to draw attention to a particular region, a particular country's publishing market, to tell us the interesting things about it, and the opportunities for conducting business with the rest of the world. And the British Council Literature team curates the cultural programme part of the Market Focus, bringing prominent and exciting visiting and British-based writers together. There's a series of public events which takes place both in the week of the book fair, in the lead-up and in the legacy. And generally it provides a useful opportunity for the UK to engage with writers from different countries. And the Market Focus programme is one of the only things that we do that actually results in a lot of UK activity, and it's inbound rather than outbound. Okay, so Mexico 20, as part of London Book Fair 2015, which was Mexico, we, in partnership with Hay Festivals, with the Mexican Department of Arts and Culture, Conaculta, and with Pushkin Press, we commissioned 20 translations of 20 different emerging Mexican writers, and we paired them with 20 different British translators, both emerging and established. We partnered with Hay Festivals to do various events at the Spanish-speaking festivals around the world, and also at Hay Wales. And as part of that, Laia Eufreza was International Writer in Residence at Hay Wales, and she blogged from the festival as well as taking part in panel discussions. The book was launched at Oaxaca during London Book Fair, and we saw this. I mean, it had many good things about it, but one of the useful things was that it provided both the writers and the translators with a sample of their work that they could show to publishers to prove that their work was worth further interest. And one of the results of this was that a writer named Laia Freza, who was the international writer in residence, has got a book coming out in July with One World. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this next case study is the Next Generation Poets Tour of India. And this one is part of one of our strategic partnerships with the Poetry Book Society, but I put it in because it also demonstrates how we generally work with writers. We often send them on this kinds of tour. So on this occasion we took Melissa Lee Horton, Luke Kennard and Mark Waldron out to India, and Chris Holyfield of the Poetry Book Society as well. They visited Jaipur Literature Festival and did an event there, and then they did 3 separate tours in Calcutta, Chennai and Ahmedabad, involving school and university outreach sessions, and a session at Calcutta Literature Meet. This particular programme, so it fits within the larger partnership, but we also do, so for example, we sent Raymond Antrobus, a spoken word poet, to Kenya. We took storyteller Helen East to South Sudan, and Badisha and Charlotte Higgins to Stockholm's Culture Festival. So it's something that we do a lot. And the next slide is a nice quote, which is, I felt that the British Council could probably organise a poetry workshop on the moon, and all I'd have to do would be to take my protein belt and turn up at the launch pad in my mini suitcase. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so the editor's trip is also part of a market focus programme, and it's one thing that we actually do an open call for. So for Mexico, we did an open call for 6 commissioning editors to take part in a trip to Mexico. The programme was devised by British Council in Mexico, and it was a series of introductions to writers, introductions to other publishers, publisher speed dating, meeting with partners, visits to venues, that sort of thing. And we found it very useful. It happens usually about 6 months before the market focus programme in April, and the publishers that go on it tend to become ambassadors for the market focus programme once they're back in the UK. And there's going to be a Poland one, probably in September or October, so if you're a publisher and you want to go to Poland, please let me know. And keep an eye on our website and our Twitter, because the open call will be going out on that. And I think that's it, but generally, just if you are interested in working with Poland, or you already work with Poland, I would love to know about it, so please grab me afterwards.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to stand up for the opportunity to stand up, actually. If anyone else wants to stand up as well, please do. Hello, I'm Rebecca Gould. I'm the Head of Arts for the British Council in Wales, and I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'm not going to talk for very long. And I'm a theatre practitioner and director by training, so this is all a bit weird for me, because in my workshops normally people sit in a circle. I feel a bit like we're all in church, I just said. And as Patrick said earlier, you feel a little bit far away. But I'd just like to say, first off, huge thank you to Alexandra and all the team at Literature Across Frontiers for what's been for me a fascinating couple of days. As the Head of Arts in Wales, I have to be a generalist rather than a specialist, and we've got these brilliant specialist teams in London who look after all the different art forms. As I've already said, my background's in theatre and I read books, so we're all right in literature and theatre. As you can probably tell by looking at me, it all gets a bit more complicated around fashion and design. But I do it. My job really is to try and help artists, producers, translators across all the art forms to think about their practice, to think about how they can collaborate really with people overseas, how they can share their practice, how they can bring people together. To sort of sit underneath our banner really, which for the British Council is to share culture, knowledge and understanding and breed a kind of friendly relation with people across the world using culture. So recently, I'm just going to tell one thing that we've done recently, which will hopefully help you to understand a bit about what we do in Cardiff. Well, we were always working partnership, and as somebody said to me recently, the thing about partnership, it's just like a suspension of mutual loathing for the hope of a kind of, future greater benefit. But actually, I don't agree with that. I think it's lovely to work in partnership. And our main partners, I have to say, in Cardiff are Wales Arts International, and Becky is going to speak in a minute. But and the big partnership project we have with them this year is around the Wales India Fund. And I know that Literature Across Frontiers and other organisations at Aberystwyth University are doing a lot of work with India. It's a fund that is partly from the British Council and partly from lottery funds in Wales. And as the run up to the opening of that fund, which will be about £400,000, it's not huge, but it's sort of significant. We've been taking artists from across the art forms, so literature, visual arts, theatre, dance, craft, textiles, etc., to India to have initial meetings with people and to get to know the kind of their counterparts in their art form in India. And we've just come back from a hugely successful trip to India. Nicola Morgan from Wales Arts International and I led that trip, and Richard Davis, who's here from Parthian Books, also came with us on that. And it was just really fruitful to be able to spend some time with each other as well as with our Indian counterparts, actually, and to learn about the culture in India and about the way things work, in the hope that then when the applications come into that Wales India Fund, there is a lot more knowledge and understanding underpinning them, really. So that's just one example, and that fund will have two kind of entry points, if you like, one at the beginning of the summer, probably the beginning of July, and one in September. And you don't need to have been, you might have been to India lots of times before, you might have never been, but be having a really nice email conversation with somebody, and you can still apply to that fund. It's just that we wanted to give people the opportunity, if they wanted to also apply to come on a research and development trip. And as Harriet's already mentioned, the other thing that I suppose I should mention is that the Walk in Cities project, of which I have not had nothing to do with, I have to say, nothing to do with me, was a huge success. Though Nicola Morgan led it from Wales Arts International with the literature team in London. And we are going to repeat that around the Shakespeare Live celebration. And it's us partnering with France. So we are looking at the moment of artists, writers from France and writers from Wales pairing up and possibly touring around different sites in Wales and France that have some sort of Shakespearean connection. And writing in response to that, but also creating a digital record of that. And this has led to some really crazy and interesting research around literature, around Shakespeare and Wales. And it actually led, through thinking about that, it led to us doing a series of films at Chapter this month. And if anyone's in Cardiff, we've got West Side Story on tomorrow, which is because we're looking at the way in which Shakespeare on film can be widened out to a bigger audience, to have discussions around. We've had one on Shakespeare in Wales, one on Shakespeare in the Union, one on Shakespeare in the musical and his influence on musical. I'm a massive musical theatre fan, so that's the one that I'm chairing personally, I would say. So never mind about the Shakespeare malarkey, give me a musical. And I worked for the RSC for 10 years as well, so I can say that was... And then finally, we've got Maxine Peake's Hamlet, which is a free event in Chapter on the 30th of April. So if you do happen to be in Cardiff, come along. And we've got Professor Carol Rutter and Yvonne Murphy, who recently directed the all-female Henry VI, doing that. So that's, as you can see, the reason I'm telling you all this is because one project quite often influences another one. And the Walk in Cities project will be happening at some point this year. And I'm just going to show you just a short film about the last Walk in Cities project, in which Welsh writers and Indian writers joined together to tour, in this case, Calcutta. We won't show you it all, but we'll just show you a little section of it. Thank you very much.
there you go. We're definitely on now. Hi, yes, I'm Becky Scotcher. I work in, I'm a development officer at Wales Arts International. Wales Arts International is the international team of the Arts Council of Wales, and is actually a partnership between the Arts Council of Wales and British Council. We work very closely with British Council and Welsh Government on promoting Welsh arts internationally and bringing world-renowned international arts into Wales. We increase the international engagement in the arts in Wales as well, so it's not just about people going outside of Wales, it's about people coming into Wales and fostering those relationships and building up knowledge within those arts organisations and for the artists. We view international as integral to the arts in Wales. I mean, you know, we want to be able to showcase our arts and show them to the world and be proud of that. And so in that way, as I said, it would be inviting your peers to come into Wales and kind of work together. So it's just, like I said, not about just going overseas. In terms of kind of things like funding and the projects, it's about building networks and building relationships. It's great to have the opportunity to work internationally, but you need to ensure that it's right for you and it's the right time and it's kind of increasing or furthering the agenda of either your art form or for the organisation itself. So part of what we do and part of our key work is to facilitate and create these relationships and these networks in different territories. In terms of funding, we have, within Wales Arts International, there are two specific funds. There's the International Opportunities Fund, which is open to all Wales-based artists and organisations. And we also have strategic funding, which is kind of part of the Wales India fund that's been talked about by Rebecca. In terms of, and there's also funding through Main Arts Council of Wales Lottery, and the information team at the Arts Council can guide people in that arena. Some of the priorities, I suppose, for the International Opportunities Fund is presenting work at significant venues, showcases and events, collaborative projects. So, for example, where you go, you say you were speaking to somebody in India and you were getting on and you felt there was a project you'd like to work on together. You could apply to us to help you as the artist based in Wales go to India in order to work with that collaborator in India. Also projects that demonstrate an international commitment to investing in the arts in Wales and also the profile and bring that profile back to Wales. And also residency projects. So we have a lot of artists that may be going to Germany to look at a new, different way to create texture on clay. Those kind of things. I think as I kind of wanted to reiterate, really, all funding is great, but you shouldn't be doing it for the sake of it. It needs to be strategically important to you as an organisation or be furthering your artistic career, and you need to ensure that it fits and you have the time and the ability and the relationships in order to make these projects happen. I just kind of wanted to reiterate that because it's all well and good doing something for the sake of it. In terms of International Opportunities Fund, you can get up to £5,000. Our priority is for accommodation and travel. We will help with other areas, but that's basically the main point of the fund, to help you get to that specific territory. We also have a regular newsletter. We put up opportunities on our website, and all the information is there for you to kind of garner. So in a very small nutshell, that's what Wales Arts International does. And if you have any questions, I've got some business cards that you can kind of come to me and ask specifics at any point.
Yeah, if anybody does have any questions, now is certainly the time. It's rare to have such an array of funders on that one table. So if anyone does have anything to say, I have a couple of questions generally, but before I go for it, yes, we have a hand.
A question
honestly say that from the point of view of Creative Europe Desk UK, we can't speculate about anything that would happen after June 23rd. It's up for the UK voters to decide. But we can't make any speculation about what might happen. It's not the most interesting answer, but it is the honest truth. So yeah. But I'd say for the work that we do, it's business as usual. We continue to advise, we continue to encourage people to apply, and please do so, and please get in touch with us if you are interested. So yeah.
I agree.
Any other?
This is actually perhaps less of a question rather than an observation. I run a UK-based publishing house. My name is Mike from Harriet Press. And, well, first of all, I think it's brilliant that, so we applied for EU funding, we received EU funding a couple of times actually, but also especially last year. And then we didn't get it for this year because you had the 25%. At that point, if you had a European Literature Award winner, you got 25%, and that was the only mark we failed on. And therefore we didn't receive the funding. I think it's brilliant that we've taken that into consideration and lowered that. Because part of, I think, the issue is with the European award winners is that they're chosen nationally. They're chosen, because I looked at a number of them. And for me, it's almost the opposite of what Patrick McGuinness was talking about. They're chosen from within a country of what the country thinks would be travelling best outside. So they are often, at least the ones I've looked at, lacking actually idiosyncrasy, the smallness, imagery. It's very interesting, and anyway, that was just an observation.
Okay, thanks.
That's great. Well, are there any other questions at all? No? Well, yeah. I had a couple of as we were in a conference which is focused on audience development, and that's one of the key priorities of the Creative Europe programme. Through my role, I've kind of had the opportunity, very fortunately, to see different sectors and how they work, including what was very new for me, the audiovisual sector. And I found myself plonked in a kind of video game situation. And as somebody who has never touched, I don't even have television. So it was awful for me to be given some sort of remote control-esque device and told to do something. However, looking into other sectors, and I think particularly today, over the past couple of days we've been very focused on literature, but Creative Europe is great because of the breadth of the projects that get supported. I hope that people who are funded by it look to other projects for inspiration because, for example, the Creative Europe supports narrative video games. So that's video games that tell a story, that take you somewhere. Some of these are absolutely beautiful. We've watched videos of them, I can't play them obviously, but we've watched videos of them being played by people, and the journeys and the stories that these characters are led through are amazing. And I wonder to what extent literature and writers, authors, translators even, could work with the video gaming industry, for example, and kind of try out new techniques and also things like virtual reality. To what extent could literary sector embrace some of these advancements in technology? Another thing that I noticed from yesterday, which was really interesting, was that we were shown in a sort of TED-style talk. We were shown these a couple of short little clips of readings of very short poems. They're beautiful, and today we were sort of when we were talking about different funders and about where kind of people sit, everyone was saying, well, you get lots of people coming to the opera and these big venues. To what extent can we work with independent cinemas and ask them to give us a minute, for a trailer, for a reading to be advertised, for to think about different places where literature can come in, and that it doesn't have to just be at literary events or within that kind of contents or in bookshops, that actually it can be also on screen. Seeing it so beautifully on screen in that film, which we didn't quite manage to show very well, but actually 1 minute of that before a film could be a really nice lead into a film about India, for example. And I think it'd be really interesting, perhaps if there were to be a follow-up of this conference, another forum, to bring in people from different sectors to kind of inject some other ideas about how other other types of industries go about their audience development. But if anyone has any other ideas of funded projects that have had those kind of, who have explored different, I don't know, in terms of different sectors, perhaps.
I've just got one thing that I've forgotten to say.
Yeah.
It's not really totally related.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a way of relating it, which is that, but it is an opportunity, so I think I should mention it. So those of you in the room who know anything about the British Council will know that we're very fond of kind of these things called seasons, and this is a kind of UK match with somewhere else in the world, in which, and you talked about more with Mexico, of course. And I just think I should mention that part of what Nicola and Wales Arts International team and I have been trying to do is to get Welsh-based organisations much better represented in these seasons, in these showcases. And the ones coming up for 2017 are UK-India, obviously, so we've got UK-India films, and that's great. UK-Indonesia, and that's will be very much based around the creative industries and new technology, basically. UK-UAE, so United Arab Emirates and WNO, for example, are going over to perform. And also UK-Korea, which is also a really interesting connection with Korea and the art scene there. So it's just, if anybody in the room suddenly goes, oh, I'm doing a project with Korea, or, then do let us know, and I can tell you more about those things.
Thank you. No, very valid point. Are there any more questions at all? Any other comments anyone would like to make? Nothing from here. Well, we're also important to Creative Europe is networking, and there are some networking drinks happening, I believe, from around 5:30 to 6:30, which we are involved in. So please join us at that. Please come and have a chat if you're interested in any of the funding opportunities. We also have Piero from the agency as well, so even more expertise in the field. Yes, thank you very much to our panel. Thank you to Alexandra, Ellen, and all of the Literature Across Frontiers team for putting on such an excellent event. And we're very grateful to be here and